I watched a video last night with the famous writer, the Gonzo writer, Hunter S. Thompson.
Oh, yeah.
He wrote this really famous, there's a book or an article about the Hells Angels back in the 60s.
I got it. It's Hells Angels. Yeah, it's a good book.
Yeah, and he did this interview on a talk show, and they had him there, and he was with the host, and they had a Hells Angel guy ride in on his motorcycle and park and talk to him. And it's a great example of how crazy people were just a few years ago. This was in '67, I think.
Yeah.
So, what is that? That's like 62 years ago, 63 years ago, yeah. And so it's 53 years ago.
Yeah.
So this guy, this Hells Angel guy,
you had me thinking. I was like, wait a second.
This Hells Angel guy is mad at Hunter S. Thompson because he didn't. I guess he made a deal with them that he was going to give them a keg of beer or 2 kegs of beer.
I remember watching this, man.
Or something, and
he didn't
for letting him hang out with them for I think he hung out with them for like 2 years.
Yeah.
And he was at this party with these guys, and this other dude just starts beating the shit out of his wife. I mean, beating her. He brutally beating his wife, and he stands up and tells the guy to stop, and they end up beating the shit out of him. Mm-hmm. All these Hells Angel guys beat him up, and then that's the last time he hangs out with them. And he never gave them the kegs of beer. And so this Hells Angel guy, he's like, well, you didn't keep your end of the deal. You made all this money off this book. And he's like, well, this guy he kept trying to tell a story that this guy was beating his wife.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's none of your fucking business. He's like, that, if a man's beating his wife, that's between... He's like, the man was beating his wife and his dog bit him. That's between them three. That has nothing to do with you. You stay out of it. And he said, sometimes you have to beat your wife like a rug to get her to pay attention or to obey you or something. And it was horrible, the stuff he was saying, but the crowd was cheering him. The women in the crowd were all laughing and cheering.
Yeah. Like
he was a comedian. Like he was a stand-up comedian. But he was serious. And Hunter S. Thompson's sitting there, and you can tell he's frustrated.
Yeah.
And he's like, why am I talking to this idiot?
Yeah.
And he's trying to tell his story, and every time he starts to speak, this guy interrupts him and starts telling you why you should beat your wife or why it's okay for people to beat their wives, and you could tell Hunter S. Thompson's like, I'm in the room with a bunch of fucking idiots.
Yeah.
But it's such a contrast to people today, because if you had someone in a room saying that today, the whole room would be against that person, because we all know that's wrong. There's no question. That is a crazy ideology.
It depends. I've seen some places where you got people like that. But everybody's cheering.
The general consensus of society is that's unacceptable.
Right.
And that would be 99% of society would say that is completely unacceptable.
Yeah.
But back then, in 1967, just 53 years ago, the consensus was that's probably okay.
So
sure.
But that's just, we need to acknowledge the improvements we've made as a society, as human beings.
Yeah.
All Homo sapiens come from savage people.
Oh yeah. What you were talking about bikers is interesting in the '60s and stuff like that. Of course, bikers, they sort of have like a hate them or love them kind of. They're kind of cool, but then they're criminals and they do terrible things too. Some of them are wonderful people.
Yeah.
But but then. You also have like what was going on in the '60s. You guys seen Easy Rider?
Yeah.
What happened at the end of that movie?
It's been a long time.
The guys got shot.
Yeah.
Dude came out of a pickup truck, blew them both away. That was actually apparently happening a lot in the '60s.
Sure. Yeah.
And a lot of kids, they travel and it was motorcycle. You go and it was popular.
Yeah.
And you had a lot of that because some strange kids with the long hair. You got to watch out. Anyway, I don't know what that was talking about. But.
So without putting anybody on blast, both my grandparents are, I don't know if the proper term is pastors. My pawpaw's a pastor, and my nanny, I don't know the female version, maybe she's a pastor as well. I don't know the proper vernacular to use. But they used to do I don't know if it was the church that they ran or they were just a part of, a biker ministry, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you literally could drive your Harley and or whatever into the chapel.
Right.
Right? And when I was growing up, I was around a lot of those people and a lot of these things, and there's some awesome awesome people I've met over the years. There's a caveat. Some of those people also are extremely dangerous.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck what anybody says. They're still dangerous today.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know.
They may be more reserved about spreading their opinion publicly in front of everybody.
Oh, yeah.
But some of those people are extremely,
yeah.
extremely, and not just bikers. I'm just saying in general.
Sure.
I think there's a lot of people. So I think we've come a long way.
Yeah.
But I think what's also happened is
Well, some of those generations are still there.
they're still there. Yeah.
They're just old now.
And yeah. And these groups have gotten, what is the word? Maybe they're more concentrated. Like they've kind of
They're smaller.
They're smaller.
Yeah.
They've kind of cocooned in and whatnot. But I still think it's there.
Sure.
You were saying about beating the wife thing. I remember having a conversation about this a long time ago, and what one of the biker guys said, some version of this would be, well, what did she do? So there was a conversation about a man that was beating his wife. This was actually at church, by the way. Outside the church,
Wow.
we're doing the you set up all the food, and I don't know what they call that, but basically feeding the congregation.
Yeah.
And the first question, it wasn't shock, it wasn't this or that. It was, well, what did she do? And I was just like, I remember that. And I was probably like 12 or 13.
Crazy, different
Yeah,
type of thinking.
I was probably 12 or 13 at the time. And I was sitting here going, that's an unusual question to ask. Like at 13, I was
Yeah.
like, that wasn't the first thing that came to my mind.
Yeah.
But now I'm sitting here going, it's such an unusual question to ask.